بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يجعل نياتنا خالصة لوجهه الكريم. Inshallah, I ask all of you to press the share button because, excuse me, this morning I overslept and didn't do my regular routine, so I was running a little late. So please forgive me for missing the scattered or the adhkar this morning. Inshallah, we'll make it up. But as people always tell me that I never listen to, you got to take some time and relax. Your body got a ride on you. So sometimes it catches up and I oversleep. Nothing that a cup of Joe won't solve. Nah. You ever see a guy laugh at his own jokes? Crazy, crazy, crazy. So today, what I'm going to do is I put up the link. So I'll give you a time. The next book we're going to read through is this text. It's called A Critique of the Palmarian Creed, which is deconstructing Ibn Taymiyyah's theology of resemblance. It's by a Jordanian sheikh. His name is Sheikh Saeed Fawda. And he wrote a series of books of clarifying some misconceptions that were initiated through the writings of Ibn Taymiyyah. And for educational purposes, we need to know sometimes the source of the confusion. Where does it come from? How did we get it? And how do we clarify it? So that is important when you're trying to, solve a problematic situation. In this case, the problematic situation is misunderstandings in terms of the proper Islamic creed, right? And for us, I don't believe most of us, this is my honest belief and opinion of our people, if we understood properly the issue, we wouldn't have a bad belief, most of us. Most of us, if we learn properly, someone explained in an intelligent way, comprehensive way, we won't be in misguidance. We're not a stubborn people. We're people that just don't have all the information. But if you give us the information, let us evaluate it, let us examine it, let us look at it with no, just the facts as they are, right? With no other purpose but to discover the truth, we'll follow the truth. We are people of truth by our nature. We like truth, right? So I wanted to, as we discuss all these issues, come on, let's examine them. Let's go through the journey of learning together. And there's nothing wrong with that. Do y'all agree? Y'all agree with me that this, my thoughts, you think it describes us properly? What you think? Fatima just took her card and said, I'm down. It's us. That's right. My sister. Give Sayyidi Maqsood my salam. So the things I'm going to mention, keep in mind, it's about learning the truth. That's it. Nothing in our heart other than searching for the truth. That's it. And let the cards fall where they may. But from our heart level, we want good, and the truth is good. No one wants to live in a state of being uninformed. You know, I'm telling you, many of us would be financially stable if they didn't hide from us different ways to earn a good living. But most of us not exposed to the avenues to become wealthy or to have a good career. Most of us don't even know. It's not that we're not capable to do it. No one told us how. No one told us the information. So we in situations that says that's impossible for you. That's it, right? It's opportunity and access. Most of the times, that's the determining factor. Besides the will of Allah, we know that already. But I'm talking about on the physical realm, the practical realm, it's opportunity and access. The uninformed stay uninformed. That's how it works. And then the informed take advantage of the uninformed. Well, in Islam, that's been happening to us, so we're going to change that. We're going to know what we're talking about. With that being said, so this book, and I'll put the link again because you'll have time to get it as I do some opening. So this is the book, not the Reliance of the Traveler. Reliance of the Traveler for something I'm going to do today. This is the book. So everyone go to mmacbooks.com and order your copy, right? We're going to take this book on, inshallah. So what is this book about? This book, I'll put it because I didn't have the picture yet. This book is going to explain in a detailed academic manner the issues of at-tashbih, which is resembling Allah to his creation, and how through the writings of this man, Ibn Taymiyyah, it spread among the Muslims, which manifests itself today in our time in the doctrine or the creed of those who call themselves as Salafiyah, right? Which we know as Al-Wahhabiyah. From where did they take this creed? Most of this creed was taken from the writings of Ahmed ibn Taymiyyah. There are some issues that Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, he added on top of what Ibn Taymiyyah left, that Ibn Taymiyyah did not believe. But in general, the basis of that doctrine could be found in the works of Ibn Taymiyyah. And many scholars wrote responses and refutations to those false claims about the creed of that Ibn Taymiyyah put forth. And they wrote treatises that Muslims would know the errors in his thinking and his understanding about the attributes of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. So before we can go into responding, let us learn who this person, his name was Ibn Taymiyyah. And he died in the year 728 age. Right? So let's learn who this person was, right? Because he is the most prominent figure of that doctrine. He is, if you want to say, their imam, their main sheikh, their foremost reference in their ideas, right? No one could be considered a true Salafi without following the ideas of Ibn Taymiyyah. That's how prominent his thought is. So if you wanted to skip all of these modern people and just try to get the essence of their ideology, you could just go read the books of Ibn Taymiyyah and you could save yourself all those pamphlets. But the books of Ibn Taymiyyah, mind you, are written in a scholarly, at a scholarly level. So probably most people couldn't read those books. It needs to be, they need to be summarized because he was a very intelligent person. So if you're not like scholarly, most of his books will bore you because they're too detailed, right? He has some small treaties, but to get details, they are, it's another level. But we're going to address some of his smaller treaties and some of his big books and start breaking this stuff down step by step, right? It's going to take us a little while, but I think it'll take the personal stuff out of it. It'll be more academic, more intellectual, which would help us, right? To learn to take because none of us, Ibn Taymiyyah lived a long time ago, so no one's going to be so attached like that. It'll be more research and understanding. Tayyib. So we're going to go to the book Reliance of the Traveler, and I think all of you should have this. If you want it, you can find it on our website, mmacbooks.com. You can get I told you all of you should have a copy of the Reliance of the Traveler as reference, right? Every single one of you should have that copy of the Reliance of the Traveler as a reference book. We're going to go to page 1059, and we're going to read a small biography of Ibn Taymiyyah. Bismillah. We're on page 1059 of the Reliance of the Traveler in the biographical notes section.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.
Excuse me, which is X178. That's the biographical note.
Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. The author, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy on him, said, Ibn Taymiyyah is Ahmed ibn Abdul Halim ibn Abdul Salam ibn Abdullah Abu al-Abbas Taqiyuddin ibn Taymiyyah al-Harani, born in Haran, east of Damascus in 661. A famous Hanbali scholar.
So get the time. 661, after the middle of the 7th century. So Taqiyuddin, that is his title. Abu Abbas, that is his kunya, his nickname. And his name is Ahmed ibn Taymiyyah, right? Ahmed ibn Taymiyyah al-Harani, from the city he is from. He was born and raised in Damascus, Syria. So he was a Syrian scholar in the 7th century. Go ahead.
A famous Hanbali scholar in Quranic exegesis, hadith, and jurisprudence. Ibn Taymiyyah was a voracious reader and author of great personal courage, who was endowed with a compelling writing style and a keen memory.
Here,
he wrote,
Ibn Taymiyyah, not only was he a Hanbali scholar in fiqh, in the school of fiqh, he was also a Sufi. And he came from a family of great Hanbali scholars. His family, his grandfather, people of his family were all great foremost Hanbali scholars of Damascus in Syria. So he's from a family of scholars, right? His grandfather, Majduddin Ibn Taymiyyah, was a well-known Hanbali scholar whose books were authoritative in the Hanbali school of jurisprudence. And what is unknown about many of those who claim to be upon the way of the Salaf, who praise Ibn Taymiyyah, that they don't realize that Ibn Taymiyyah was a Sufi, which is very clear from his writings, that he followed the way of at-tasawwuf. In fact, he has treatises, explanations on the path of tasawwuf, of the work of Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jailani, or al-Jilani, the great Hanbali Sufi master. And in his collection of Fatawa, he has a whole section, a whole book on at-tasawwuf and explaining what is right according to him and what is wrong in at-tasawwuf. But never himself did he deny the reality and the truthfulness and the validity of at-tasawwuf. It's just as a note. And all these things I'll show you, right? It's not something, but I'm just mentioning and summarizing. Because those who say that, to get the Sufis, he was a Sufi. So there should be an understanding there's a difference, and please write this note, Isla, if you put it up. There is a difference between Sufism and Sufi claimers. There is a difference, a distinct difference between Sufism and Sufi claimers. What Ibn Taymiyyah was against, according to him, was Sufi claimers. Things that didn't represent true tasawwuf, according to him, some of which were right and some of which were wrong. Some of those things he said he was correct in, and some of those things he said he was incorrect in. But the essence of Sufism, he was not opposed to it, which is evidenced by his own writings and the writings of his main student, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, which we're going to talk about as well today. Naam, go ahead. So I'm going to
wrote of him.
You should note this. Please put this in the box. This is very important. Not only with talking about what we said about Ibn Taymiyyah, in general in our time, there is a difference, a distinct difference between tasawwuf, Sufism, and Sufi claimers. Let me just touch that for a minute. Please, everyone put that in the chat box. I want everyone to notice that. I ask you to do that. Number one, you're helping me. And number two, you're highlighting for people who may not pay attention well by something being repeated and put in front of them, a visual, they're able to focus in. So please help me. Bismillah. Yeah, so just fill it up. Everyone put it in, right? By this time, you should work on your cut and paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. What do I mean by that? No Muslim who knows anything about Islam will deny Sufism. Even if they don't call it Sufism, when you learn what Sufism is, at-tasawwuf in Arabic, right? No Muslim, whether they be Wahhabi, Salafi, anything, Shi'i, Sunni, Ash'ari, don't matter. No Muslim who says I'm a Muslim, whether that claim is true or false, doesn't matter. No one who says I'm a Muslim in reality will deny tasawwuf. If you take away the name Sufism, they will agree with everything that is real Sufism. You follow what I mean? So that is something that is in our deen, right? Real Sufism. What people will deny is what they consider excesses that people call Sufism. And that's what I mean by a Sufi claimer. So you have people who say, I'm a Sufi, or what they practice is really not tasawwuf. It's really not Sufism. It's excess. It's deviation from Sufism. So that's the difference. Without going into detail, is that clear what I just said? So what Ibn Taymiyyah was against was what he considered Sufi claimers, because he mentions who are the real Sufis and that is the right way among as-Salaf. So it's not against tasawwuf itself. And he used the word tasawwuf, so that's for him side. But from others, even if you didn't use the name, the technical term, the meanings that are understood from that technical term, every Muslim agrees with. No one denies that. Tell you. Okay. So this false claim, oh, he's a Sufi. That's all smoke and mirrors. He's a Sufi. So is everyone who says I'm a Muslim a Sufi, whether they call themselves it or not. If you're a good practicing Muslim, you're a Sufi. When you understand what Sufism is. All of us are Sufis. Now, the levels of Sufism, as Ibn Taymiyyah mentioned himself, are of different degrees. Not all people are the same. Some are excellent in their Sufism, and some people are need help, right? Like us, like me, right? But all Muslims are Sufis. Every Muslim is a Sufi at different levels, not the same stage, right? Different levels. There's those excellence and those barely hanging on to their Islam, but they have some aspects of tasawwuf. Okay, go ahead.
Bahabi wrote of him, I never saw anyone faster at recalling the Quranic verses dealing with subjects he was discussing, or anyone who could remember Hadith text more vividly.
Al-Dhahabi, he is one of the foremost scholars in knowledge of the biography of narrators of Hadith and scholars in general. His work in the field of Hadith and knowing about narrators, in the field of history, knowing about the scholars from his time, from the time of the Prophet up to his time, are among the foremost works in the field. Like if you're serious about studying and knowing about the ranks of scholars and their biographies and who related and all of that, the works of Al-Dhahabi, they're going to come into play, right? Al-Dhahabi was a student of Ibn Taymiyyah. He was a Shafi'i Hadith scholar and a student of Ibn Taymiyyah. By that mere fact will let you know his rank, Ibn Taymiyyah, in knowledge, that Al-Dhahabi was his student. So it tells you like he wasn't some unlearned person. His student was Al-Dhahabi. Ibn Kathir, the tafsir scholar, the famous tafsir Ibn Kathir, was a student of Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah was a student of Ibn Taymiyyah. When we talk about fairness, not because I'm Ash'ari and some of them had bad beliefs, I'm going to just knock off everything they say. Look, these people were learned, and they were in an environment of deep learning, right? We don't take that away. Even learned people make mistakes, right? And errors, and sometimes grave errors, right? But we're talking about recognizing who we're talking about. If Al-Dhahabi said that, and Al-Dhahabi was a master in the field of hadith and a master of narrators and knowing biographies, He said, I never saw anyone faster at recalling the Quranic verses dealing with the subjects he was discussing, or anyone who can remember hadith texts with their chain of narrators remind you more vividly. The guy was a giant in the field. When I'm talking about anyone, right? So we got to realize why he was so influential. He was very intelligent. That's why his ideas were able to spread, because too many people cannot match him at his rank. Now,
Wahhabi estimates that his legal opinions on various subjects amount to 300 or more volumes. He was imprisoned during much of his life in Cairo, Alexandria, and Damascus for his writings.
and
Scholars of
here,
his time,
while in prison, he wrote books from his mind. And that's deep. That you think that this guy is authoring books from his mind. Because sometimes people would talk about him as if he was some idiot, which is an insult to knowledge itself, right? He wasn't an idiot. He was very smart. He made mistakes, grave mistakes, some of those that reached the level of blasphemy. But that doesn't mean he wasn't an intelligent person. He was an intelligent person who made grave errors. But there are other areas where, amazing, right? You got to be fair, right? There is fairness when you're talking about people, right? Because most of us who may say something and act as if we're talking about me or you. No, he wasn't like me and you, right? You heard what Adhabi said about him? So it's not that simple. It's more complex than just saying, oh, he's a deviant, he's blasphemer. No, not that simple, right? Not when you're dealing with scholarship. Now,
scholars of his time accusing him of believing Allah Ta'ala to be a corporeal entity because of what he mentioned in his Al-Aqiqah Al-Hamawiyah,
Al-Aqidah.
Al-Hamawiyah, and Al-Wasitiyah, and other works, such as that Allah Ta'ala's yad, foot, don't know, shin, and face, wash are
So
literal.
yad is what they're translating as hand, right? Al-Qadam, Qadam, or Ar-Rijl, Rijl, they use both those terms. That's what they mean by foot. As-Shin, As-Saq, Saaq, and Al-Wajh for face. All of these, that's the Arabic terms. So you got yad, they translate as hand. Al-Qadam or Ar-Rijl, they use as foot. As-Saq, they use for shin. And Wajh, they use for face.
Such that Allah Ta'ala's yad, qadam, saq, and wajh are literal, haqiqi, attributes, and that he is upon the throne in person.
All right, so these are the issues where, and we were talking about that yesterday, where Ibn Taymiyyah, by the scholars of his time, among the foremost of those was the great Imam Taqiyuddin al-Subki and others, Taqiyuddin al-Husni, who came later. All of those great scholars, they wrote books in refuting these ideas of Ibn Taymiyyah, right? And what happened in our time with the spread of the Wahhabi doctrine, that they highlighted Ibn Taymiyyah's works and hid what the scholars of his time said and wrote about him. And all that stuff is left in Arabic. So we have no access to it as English-speaking people. And it wasn't brought to us. So we only had one side of it without ever seeing what the scholars of his time said about him, nor how they dealt with him, which we're going to speak about as we go through this text, right? So we're going to have a balanced view. What was mentioned and what he said and what the scholars of his time who knew him, who were his contemporaries, said about him. And among those things, he wrote these books, Al-Aqidatul Hamawiyah, Al-Aqidatul Wasitiyah. And in those books, he said about Allah's attributes, things that were not permissible to say, among them that this yad and qadam and saq and wajh, which they translate in English as hand, foot, shin, and face, are haqiqi or literal attributes to Allah, which was never accepted by the Salaf or the Khalaf of this nation. Never accepted as that. But that was his claim. And he took that claim from somewhere. But Al-Wahhabiyya, the Salafiyya of our time, they got that claim from the books of Ibn Taymiyyah. So someone asks, they don't say literal. Yes, they do. And in the 8th century and thereafter, all of the scholars of Ahl Sunnah from the Ash'ira or Maturidiyya refuted those claims that those attributes are literal. Why? Because a literal interpretation would lead to tashbih, to likening Allah to his creation, to tajseem, to giving Allah bodily appendages. That's why they wrote against his ideas. And the books are so many of the scholars during his time and after his time for those ideas. And others, like at-tawassul, making dua to Allah by the status of the Prophet and the righteous, which was another issue that Ibn Taymiyyah disagreed with, and the scholars wrote against him. And for all of these things and other matters, he was imprisoned for that, right? Which they put him in Cairo, in Damascus, and then he in Cairo and back to Damascus, where he died in prison. But for those reasons, he was imprisoned. All those different ideas. And when we say in prison, I want you to understand that he was put in prison by the chief judge of every school, the chief judge of the Hanafis, the chief judge of the Malikis, the chief judge of the Shafi'is, and the chief judge of the Hanbalis, even though he was Hanbali. They all signed an agreement to imprison him for his ideas. Now, when we say that, you got to remember this is in Islamic countries with Islamic government and rulers and courts and judges like Supreme Court. He went before the chief justices of every school. They came together to imprison him, right? So what some try to say, people were jealous of him. That's a big jealousy that the whole Islamic country is against you, even your people. But when we examine why, you'll see those points, which scholars wrote. So I'm going to be exposing you to a lot of information you've probably never heard, right? And information and scholars and books. So you're going to need your pens. You're going to need to take good notes. Now, go ahead.
The error in this, as mentioned above at X174, is that suggesting such attributes are literal is an innovation and unjustifiable inference from the Quranic and Hadith texts that mention them. The way of the early Muslims.
Pause there, right? The point that he said that he is upon the throne in person, bidhatihi, it was so bad that he wrote Ibn Taymiyyah that Allah is upon his throne, wal-iyadhu billah, and on the day of judgment, he's going to leave a place for the Prophet Muhammad to sit next to him. A'udhu billah. This is in his books. That he's going to leave a place, there is a space that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is going to sit on the throne with him. No, I'm going to show you in the books. That's how bad that creed was. So when he said Allah is in person, it's literal, but he said he's going to sit the Prophet Muhammad next to him. That's in the books of Ibn Taymiyyah. No, we're not. We're going to expose you to a lot of stuff that people they haven't told you. And that's one of them. So the fact we say it's literal, yeah, amen, literal. And that's why they said this is tajseem, because For Allah is on the throne and the Prophet is going to be sitting with him. What the hell? What is that? But he wrote it. And they related it in their books. It's just you don't see their books because they only give you in English what they want you to have. And they leave out these ugly statements that were there. Unless then you get the bold one that says, we ain't even, this is what the scholars believe, and they put it. But most of them, they don't put, not in English.
For the way of the early Muslims was mere acceptance of such expressions on faith without saying how they are meant, and without additions, subtractions, or substituting meanings imagined to be synonyms, while acknowledging Allah Ta'ala's absolute transcendence beyond the characteristics of created things, in conformity with the Quranic verse. There is nothing whatsoever like unto him. Quran, Surah 42, Ayah 11.
Which is called a tafweed, which we talk about.
As for figurative interpretations that preserve the divine transcendence, scholars of tenets of faith have only had recourse to them in times when men of reprehensible innovations, bid'ah, quoting hadiths and Quranic verses, have caused confusion in the minds of common Muslims as to whether Allah Ta'ala has attributes like those of his creation, or whether he is transcendently beyond any image conceivable to the minds of men.
Here, I want you to slow down, right? Before you jump in to calling someone kafir, don't go there yet. Understand what is correct and understand what is wrong. Clearly, right? Then the judgment of such ones, these things come later. First, understand. Because if you rush and you don't understand, you're just a parrot, right? Which is wrong, right? So we're not talking about the judgment of Ibn Taymiyyah. That's not our discussion right now, right? Or the judgment of the Wahhabiyya. We're not talking about that. Right now, we're trying to understand the issue. Is that clear for everyone? So don't no one start putting in the conference, kafir, this kufr, that. La, 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 la. I want you to understand the issue first, right? So don't rush. Just understand the issue, right? Is that clear? Does everyone got me? I'm not going to start the kufr stuff because that's just parrot, and you don't know what you're talking about, and you may judge some kufr that's not kufr because you don't even know what kufr is. We're not going to do that, right? I want you to understand the issue. Then after understanding the issue, if that's where you want to go with it, you understand what you're talking about, go for it, right? But before clearly understanding the issue, don't get people to be a parrot. I hate parrots as human beings. Let a parrot be the bird, not a human. Right? Please keep that in mind. The parrot is a bird, not a human being. Let the parrot be a parrot. You as a human being got an intellect. Don't be a parrot. Learn and then understand. And when you repeat something, it's because you understand it, not just because someone said it to you. That's a problem. And Black people have fallen to that far too long. I just know how to parrot. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I can say it. Know what you're talking about before you say it. So just understand the issue. That's foul, Fatima. That's foul, foul, foul. Serious. In education, you can't be a parrot, right? In American context, in the West, a parrot is not respected because all it says is you don't know. And that's why when you write a paper, if you just in school, if you just copy someone, they're going to fail you. Why? They call that plagiarism. And really, plagiarism is being a parrot. You don't know what you're talking about. You just copy somebody's stuff. You don't understand. If you understood, you wouldn't have to plagiarize. That's how they look at it. Who studied in school, educated? Am I right or wrong? Is that the feeling? When you plagiarize, the professor believes from that you don't understand. They want to see what you understand. And if you understand, you don't need to plagiarize. You can express the same thing in your own thoughts, and it will be original. You understand. You ain't said nothing different. You just shown that you understood the subject and you can express it without copying somebody's paper. The answer's still right. What you plagiarize is correct, but you don't understand. That's why you copied. So Islamically, I don't want us, for us, serious. We got to understand the subject matters. Don't just repeat what people say without understanding. Now, if you understood what they said and you repeat, no problem, right? I understand. And I'm quoting based on something I understand, especially when you're talking about calling someone a kafir. That's a dangerous thing. And if you don't know what you're talking about, you're just repeating because someone told you that and you didn't understand yourself, you're going to be responsible for that. So be careful. But if you understand and you got all the stuff, by all means, apply what your knowledge leads you to. But right now, that's not the subject of our discussion. Was Ibn Taymiyyah or the Wahhabis, are they kafir? That's not our discussion. I want you to understand the issue, right? That's what I'm working at. Understand the issue well. Go ahead.
Scholars' firmness in condemning those who have raised such confusions has traditionally been very uncompromising. And this is no doubt the reason that a number of the Imams of the Shafi'i school, among them Taqiyuddin Subki,
Taqiyuddin Subki, he was one of the great leading mujtahid scholars of the Shafi'i school, and in Egypt and in Sham, Nam.
Ibn Hajar Haytami.
Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, who lived in the 10th century, who was a great scholar who was end up in Mecca. He is among the foremost latter scholars of the Shafi'i school, along with Imam al-Ramli.
And Al-Iz ibn Jama'ah,
who was a famous Shafi'i scholar as well, who wrote many books in fiqh and in aqidah, and he wrote also refuting the ideas of Ibn Taymiyyah.
Gave formal legal opinions that Ibn Taymiyyah was misguided and misguiding in tenets of faith, and warned people from accepting his theories.
Now here, some scholars in their books, they wrote the judgment of kufr. Others, they said he is misguided and misguiding, and it's not permissible to follow him. So you will find in the books of the early scholars both judgments, right? Some said this, some said that. And that all relates to how people viewed his views, how they looked at it, from what angle they looked at it, whether they judged it as kufr or dalal, misguidance, right? Tell you. Go ahead.
The Hanafi scholar Muhammad Zahid al-Kawthari.
Muhammad Zahid al-Kawthari was one of the great scholars from the Ottoman scholars who ended up in Egypt and was among the foremost scholars of his time, especially in the areas of the creed and explaining the creed of Ahl Sunnah. And he was very hard, as many of the Hanafi was, on the works of Ibn Taymiyyah.
Has written.
Very uncompromising, should I say.
Has written, whoever thinks that all the scholars of his time joined in a single conspiracy against him from personal envy should rather impugn their own intelligence and understanding. After studying the repugnance of his deviations in belief in works for which he was asked to repent time after time, and moved from prison to prison until he passed on to what he sent ahead.
And here, Muhammad Zahid al-Kawthari indicates this idea that all the scholars was against Ibn Taymiyyah and they conspired because they was jealous because of his knowledge. SubhanAllah, like everybody. And when we examine what you wrote and what you said, maybe we should reconsider such a position that, look what you said. Of course they're going to refute you. Look at the words you said. And when I show you some of his statements and point them out to you, you're going to be shocked that he said that. Yeah, here's the book. Here's what he said. He said some strange things. And it wasn't only him. Him and everyone who thought like him, they put in prison. Not just him. So sometimes they tell a story as if, it was just him. La, la, la. Whoever thought like him got the same thing. There was considered a big fitna. And they dealt with it. Now, go ahead.
While few deny that Ibn Taymiyyah was a copious and eloquent writer and hadith scholar, his career, like that of others, demonstrates that a man may be outstanding in one field and yet suffer from radical deficiencies in another.
Here, hold that part. Highlight that. Right? A man may be outstanding. Could you type this and put it up, please, Isla? A man may be outstanding in one field and yet suffer from radical deficiencies in another. That's so important to understand. A man may be outstanding in one field and yet suffer from radical deficiencies in another. Put that there. And I want us to copy and paste that and let that sit in our mind. This is serious. That's a serious line there. You got it? It's coming. A man may be outstanding in one field and yet suffer from radical deficiencies in another. Man, that's heavy. Right? Everyone copy that. Copy, paste, put it back. Copy, paste. This is serious fairness right here in examining things, to be fair. Like, which we lose. We lose balance and fairness in our discussions. This is applicable to everyone, not just Ibn Taymiyyah. That's why it's so powerful. And I've seen this to be a fact for everyone. And that's why you don't become fanatical over nobody. I don't care who they are, except Sayyidina Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he don't make those mistakes. Right? Because he's giving revelation. So Sayyidina Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he'll make no mistakes. Everybody else, you can accept some of what they say and you can reject some of what they say. Everybody else. Do you follow that? Please, please, please keep this in your mind. The only one whose statements, all of them, must be accepted is Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Everyone else, they could have things that are right and they can have things that are wrong. Things you accept and things you must reject. Everybody else. And that doesn't put anyone down. It's just reality. Al-insanu kamil, the real perfected human being is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No one else. Everyone else, they got some things you don't have to accept. Not binding on you to accept it. Right? Even your sheikh, he got some stuff that's wrong. Even your sheikh. Who are you? No, your sheikh ain't Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? Your sheikh is not Sayyidina Muhammad. Your sheikh is a human being that has correct things and wrong things. Every human being got that. Let's not forget that. So though your sheikh, though a person may be outstanding in this area, may be among the foremost scholars in this area, but in this field he's weak, he doesn't know. If he talks about it, he's going to come up with crazy ideas. It's not his field, he doesn't understand. He's not proficient in it. So when he talks about it, he's going to make mistakes. It's not his field. That doesn't mean he's not outstanding in that. This he shouldn't be talking about. He doesn't know, right? And what Isla put is right. I cannot count the number of times in the years I've been in the company of Sheikh Samir that he gave a lesson and didn't say that statement. I may be right, I may be wrong. Allah knows best. I may be right, I may be wrong. He doesn't always, I'm right because I'm Sheikh Samir. No, I may be incorrect in this. I believe I'm right, but I could be wrong. Right? That's reality. In some areas, if he talk, it's not qualified to talk in that area. That doesn't make him not knowledgeable in what he does, but in this area. Sheikh Samir, I'll just use my own teacher. He's a master of Quran. Its styles of recitation, explanation, hadith, Hanafi fiqh, right? But if you ask him in some fields, he may not know. You ask him the details of the Maliki madhab, he's not going to know. He may know some things, but that's not his area of study. He doesn't know, right? And he'll always say, I think we should go check. I really don't know, right? But if you ask him about his field, like an ocean, just open the faucets and water just come gushing out. But if it's not his field, can't talk about it, right? You know what amazes me? Sometimes we have teachers that are so arrogant, they're actually going to tell the black man about the black situation. Come on, Sheikh, that's not your field. You can't talk about the black struggle. You know nothing about the black struggle. The Sheikh said we should. The Sheikh doesn't know, he's not black. He doesn't even live in our circumstances. He can't talk about that. He doesn't know. And it's a crime for him to talk about it. It's an intellectual injustice for him to talk about the black situation. He should be quiet and ask someone who's dealing with it. Do you follow what I mean? That's how important it is. That statement, that's fairness, right? That is fairness in dealing with someone. So if he's talking about his area, then but if he goes outside of his field, right? He's going to make mistakes. Now, sometimes those mistakes are dangerous, that take you out of Islam, and some of them are misguidance, and some of them they're just wrong. They're not that deep. Depends what you're talking about. So I just wanted to keep that. But we need that for our own dealings with people, because people come to us act like they know everything. You don't. And you may be right in that and mistaken in that. And give yourself the ability to be mistaken, right? I can be mistaken. It's not above me. It doesn't put me down. What will put me down is if I'm mistaken, and then when I find out I'm mistaken, I don't accept I'm mistaken. I still try to be right. That's arrogance, right? Arrogance, in reality, is to reject the truth when it comes to you. You know it's the truth and you just reject it, even though you know it's true. That's arrogance. But being mistaken, that's human, right? Human beings make mistakes. No one is free from that. put that up, I think sometimes we forget that. Making mistakes is human. Making mistakes is human. We should keep these things in our mind, because we start getting so personal, we forget things, man. Making mistakes is human. Humans make mistakes. Kill who you are. Why am I mentioning that? So don't jump all over people for their mistakes. Correct them, yes. But putting them down and, using their mistakes to humiliate them, we're human beings. It's not the purpose. Like, this hard stuff, seriously. Oh, did you heard? He made that mistake. He slipped. He didn't pronounce this right. He didn't do this. He's a human being. It's not Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam who's the best of human beings. And even when the scholars, they talk about Sayyidina Muhammad as a human being, they say, Basharun la kal bashar. He's a human being, not like other human beings. And he told the Sahaba, I'm not like you. We're not the same. We're not the same. I'm not like you. Don't try to do what I do. You're not like me. I'm supported from a whole nother source. So even when we point out a mistake or wrong, we're not attacking a person because he made a mistake. You made a mistake. Correct it. Now, if you stand on your mistake and you know it's clearly a mistake, then we're not censoring you for the mistake. We're censoring you because you're arrogant and misguiding and misguided. And that's dangerous. But the fact that you made an error, you're human. Correct it. Right? All these are spiritual lessons too, seriously, as how we should be as Muslims. Right? That has a big lesson in it. Right? So Sheikh Samir says, I'm wrong all the time. It's serious. Sometimes you be around Sheikh Samir and he's a beautiful person to be around because you learn so many amazing things. You're like, I'm wrong all the time. And he say it with, and it ain't just show. You see it in the state like, all right, I was wrong. What's the right answer? Tell me, Sheikh. And he accept. With no reservations. I'm like, this guy's incredible. Right? He'll never say, who are you to correct me? He'd be like, don't let me be wrong. If you see I made a mistake, tell me. Sometimes even when we're reading and Sheikh make a mistake, if you don't correct him, he's going to censure you. Right? You ain't got to embarrass him or try to bring it in public. But like if he makes a mistake, he wants you to tell him. He don't want to make a mistake. He's human though. He makes mistakes. And he'll say it straight up. When we read, look, we read hadith books, hadith with Sheikh Samir, right? He want as many copies of the book available. So we're reading, say, Sahih Bukhari or Sahih Muslim or any other book. He want as many different copies that everybody have a different copy if it's available, right? And when you see difference, make me aware of it. And then he would be writing in the book. I got books where Sheikh Samir just wrote all over the book. Be like, Sheikh, man, this is my book. Like, yo, what's that? But he making notes from different copies. And then he go check manuscripts, like amazing stuff. And you be like, man, he just want to make sure it's right. right? That's some deep stuff. He just want to make sure it's right. All right, I'm sorry, Rita. I'm infringing on your time. Yeah, keep that in mind though. Let's try to make ourselves more human and dealing with humans like they're humans, right? And not put people above their rank, nor put them down unnecessarily because of their mistakes. Let's have some fairness and balance, even with the ones we disagree with, like Ibn Taymiyyah. Disagree, but we don't got to be unfair about it. Go ahead.
The most reliable index of which is how a field's imams regard his work in it. By this measure, indeed, by the standards of all previously Ahl-Sunnah scholars, it is clear that despite a voluminous and influential written legacy, Ibn Taymiyyah cannot be considered an authority on tenets of faith, a field in which he made mistakes profoundly incompatible with the beliefs of Islam, as also with a number of his legal views that violated the scholarly consensus.
And Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, he numbered around 60 contradictions in the works of Ibn Taymiyyah on scholarly consensus, some in belief and some in practice. Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, he said around 60 issues which Ibn Taymiyyah contradicted scholarly consensus in belief and rules of the religion. And he enumerated many of them, which is a lot. It's a whole lot. One is sufficient, but 60, la ilaha illallah. Naam.
It should be remembered that such matters are not the province of personal reasoning, ijtihad, whether Ibn Taymiyyah considered them to be out of sincere conviction or whether simply because, as Imam Subki said, his learning exceeded his intelligence.
And as Subki, he greatly said, ilmuhu akbaru min aqlihi. His knowledge was greater than his understanding, right? His intellect. He had a lot of knowledge, but sometimes he ain't know how to process all that stuff. You know, the grandparents sometimes, or your parents, they could be, they wasn't so educated, and they would see you and they would say, "You so smart, you stupid." Anyone ever heard that from the elders? They heard somebody say, "You're so smart, you stupid." Right? Have you ever heard that? I heard it a lot. Oh my goodness. So that's when he said ilmuhu akbaru min aqlihi, is the same thing when our elders would say, "You so smart, you stupid," or "You got a lot of book knowledge and no common sense." Right? You heard that? You got all that book knowledge but no common sense. You know what I'm saying? That's a similar statement. All right, so the book, this is where we're going to be at. This is going to be a little advanced read, but we're going to get through it together. Together, we're going to get through it. So what it's going to do is it's going to point us to a lot of subjects, and it's going to help us. And because it's going to be a challenging read for some, I'm going to make sure I just highlight points as well. We're going to read the whole book, but I'm only going to focus in on points that we need to highlight for our discussion. So we'll read the whole book, but I'm going to, let's say we're going to give it, we'll start by the weekend. I mean, not this weekend, by next week, right? To give everyone 1 week to get the book. So if you get it now or over the next day or two, it should reach you by, let's say, by next Saturday, we can start. And what I'm going to do in between, I'm going to highlight points that's going to prepare us for the book, right? So we still, like we read Ibn Taymiyyah, we're going to read about Ibn Qayyum, and we're going to mention some different issues so I can get you to in the context. So here's the name of the book, and here's the link, which there's the link. And for those on YouTube, there's the link. For the people on YouTube, there's the link. So it's going to be an interesting read. I think it's very important. At least when we finish, you're not going to be confused in issues of Aqidah. And I'm going to supplement it with actual quotes from the books of their scholars, their explanations. We're going to really put it in context so you have a full understanding of what is being said. All right, Rita, if you need to go, you can go. I'm just take any questions that someone may have. So someone had some questions. Let me try to answer them. If you had questions and I missed it, put it back because it's gone. I can't see it. Let me go up and see what questions I can see. Most of them are gone. Yeah, I don't have any questions except Mary Booker's question. There's a scholar and researcher in the Nation of Islam named Dr. Wesley Muhammad that uses the creed of Ibn Taymiyyah and the pseudo-Salafis to justify the beliefs of the Nation of Islam. It's the same. One is physical and one is mental, but it's the same thing. I know that's going to hurt some people for me to say that, but it is. That's why you can use it. The belief of the Nation of Islam is a physical manifestation, and the beliefs of the Wahhabiyya is a mental manifestation of physical representation. Because they say it's literal, and they say, so they just make the form that you can see, and they make a form that you don't know the how of, but it's a form, and it is real, so it's the same thing. So I can see the, the comparison. It's easy, not hard. That's not hard. It's ugly, but it's not hard. So it's Ibn Taymiyyah. So Ibn Taymiyyah did this as one person who led others to believe him, meanwhile ignoring everyone before him and scholarly consensus. Not that simple. He disagreed with them. And he found some of the Mushabbiha and Mujassima who lived in the 4th century, and he followed their ideas. He didn't just make it up himself. He took some of their ideas and he considered. The thing with Ibn Taymiyyah was that he believed that the Quran and the Sunnah is as it is and as he imagined it to be. Right? So that's how he got into literalism. He didn't take into consideration these other things. But it's not as simple as that. He had a reason why he said everything he said. He didn't just make stuff up. But his reasoning was faulty when it's examined, right? So don't think they just made it up out of the sky. No, he has reports, he has hadith, he has verses of the Quran. He was a knowledgeable person. He has a reason why he said what he said. But it was mistaken. And we'll see that why. Do you have a suggestion on how to make easy to read Aqidah books for inner city youth and people of urban environments? I don't believe we should just give them books. I believe we should teach them. We should give them teachers with books. Because to be honest, I'm going to ask you a question quickly. What is the average reading grade level, average, for inner city youth and people of urban environments? Really, their reading level, grade level, average. My wife's a teacher, so she can answer that. She's been teaching in the inner city, and maybe others who are educators, someone who know what they're talking about, right? They deal with it. What is the average grade level, reading level of an average inner city youth? Average. What's their reading level? 4th to 6th grade. 6th grade tops. So should such a person be given books alone without no aids? I mean, I see all these answers, right? Right? Should such a person be given a book without aid? They can't read. They don't understand. They can't read, let alone understand what they're reading. Especially if it's written anything above a 6th, 7th, 8th grade level. They can't understand it. It's too much, right? So I don't believe we should give them books. We should give them books with teachers. And there's nothing wrong with that, so that they can understand. Now, complicate that by teaching them, giving them books on subjects they know nothing about. They have no background with it. They don't understand anything about Aqidah. And you're going to give them a book about Aqidah, and they come from Christian society background, anthropomorphic understanding of angels and God and everything else. And you expect them to understand? It's going to be almost impossible. Forget about it. It's not happening. So give them teachers. That's why I said with the Black Imams Roundtable that we need to go around the country on the ground and educate people. Even on the internet, it's not good because you can't see what the person's really doing. A lot of people are not fully engaged while they're on the internet. They listen to something, they got something else in the background, then they come back, they catch a little, and people always say it. Oh, I was doing something, I missed it, right? But if we're face to face, you can't do that. No, put your phone down. No surfing the net while we having class. That goes on. So that, and how I know it goes on? Because when I ask questions, people can't answer. And a lot of it is not because if they was listening, they would have understood, but they was distracted. They distracted with the comments, they distracted with, so it's disadvantages, right? And then when you ain't like that anyway, it's a problem. So that's why it needs to be face-to-face teaching, which we call at-talaqi, learning directly from a teacher. Face-to-face. You can never replace that. Because books don't talk, only living teachers do. Book don't tell you this is a printing error, this is a mistake. No, you're misunderstanding. The book can't do that. Only a living teacher can do that. Do y'all understand what I just, this point? The point that books don't talk. A book can't tell you this is a printing error. The book can't tell you this is a mistake, this is wrong. A book can't tell you you are misunderstanding this. A book can't do that. Only a living teacher. You need a teacher. I don't care who you are. And that's why we find a lot of people making mistakes because they don't have teachers. No one taught them. They learned on their own. And they picked up what was right and what was wrong. Not, they just didn't have the ability to acquire the knowledge properly. His errors aside, was there any specifically Ibn Taymiyyah specialized in knowledge-wise, such as all of that? Fiqh, Hadith, Quran, he was knowledgeable, no doubt. He made errors in fiqh, he made errors in Hadith, and he made errors in understanding the Quran, but he was scholarly in all of that stuff. No doubt, he was scholarly in all of stuff. But his errors always poured over, usually. And that's what was dangerous about his works. Like, and that's the same thing. People say, I only go to the Wahhabis to learn Arabic. When you go learn Arabic, they teach you their bad belief through Arabic. People say, I'm going to learn Arabic. Now, I wouldn't go learn Arabic from the Wahhabi. He's going to teach you bad belief in Arabic, right? I remember, I'll show you. I have the book somewhere. I got to find it. There is a famous beginner's Arabic book where you learn Arabic grammar, Ajurumiyya, right? The Wahhabis explained that book. And the first line in that book is speech is a word compounded in the Arabic language that has a benefit. Right? الكلام هو اللفظ المراقب المفيد بالوجع. Naam. Right? That's like the first line in the book. And when the Wahhabis wrote in that, that's about grammar. Al-kalam, speech, right? Is lafz murakkab, is word that is combined. Mufid has a benefit bilwadi in the Arabic language. When you finish, you get something out of it. That's speech, right? Then when they teach that, they explain, they say kalamullah harf wa sawt. The speech of Allah is words and sounds, letters and sounds. What the heck that got to do with what we're talking about? We're talking about what is speech in the Arabic language. How did you put that issue of your bad aqidah that Allah's speech is letters and sounds? Has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But they use the word kalam Allah, and put their aqidah, which is wrong because the kalam of Allah is not words and sounds or letters and sounds, huruf or sawt. That's rejected. But you see, you're learning Arabic, and they taught you this ugly belief in Arabic. I remember one person, he came to the masjid, he's studying in the University of Medina. So, you know, our people, I want to learn Arabic, and we can't do everything, right? So there's priorities. So they went to this person to learn Arabic, and he gives them the book. And some of our like, Imam, check this book. So I opened the book, and there's lessons, alif, ba, ta, nice. Then in the middle of the book, Tawheed is 3 types. Tawheedul Rububiyyah, Tawheedul Uluhiyyah, Tawheedul Asma wa Sifat. I closed the book. I said, take that stuff back to him. Tell him you don't want to learn Arabic from him. You see my point? He's an Arabic book for beginners, but you're teaching them this ugly belief, this innovated belief. Tawheed is of 3 kinds. Tawheed of lordship, Tawheed of worship, godhood, and Tawheed of Asma wa Sifat, names and attributes. What does that got to do with Arabic language? Nothing, 0. But, so do you understand how whatever you study, they start putting their stuff, and that's the danger. So they slip you a Mickey. That's another way. Slip you a Mickey. That's the danger. But they don't tell you I'm slipping you a Mickey. They just slip the Mickey. You want a microwave answer? No. Right? That's a microwave answer. Now, if you ask me how did I get there, that's another story. The answer, no. But that's not sufficient as an answer. Why don't you learn why? Then you'll really understand why you don't take knowledge from Ibn Taymiyyah. Or what can you take from Ibn Taymiyyah? What to take and what not to take? That would be even better. And you need to do that across the board. Right? Everything Imam Amin say is not truth. Some of it is his opinion, and he could be wrong. So distinguish when you're learning from Imam Amin what is true and fact and what is his opinion. If it's fact, accept it. If it's just his opinion, he could be right, it could be wrong. You follow my point? So not just Ibn Taymiyyah, with anybody, right? I teach classes. There are some people I know, and they were among my teachers. They are very critical of everybody else but themselves. They are very critical of everyone else except themselves. So when we're studying their stuff, I always point to their mistakes, just to show the person who's fanatical about them that they make mistakes too. Like I'm conscious. I catch their mistakes and I point to it. Not to say they're mistaken, just to show the person who gets so fanatical about them that they make mistakes too. See, that's an error. They did it. That's an error. That's not true. That's an opinion. That's false. That's not a fact. Let me give you an example of that, which is famous that some people do. He said this, he meant this, so his judgment is this. Is that true or false? He said this, that means he meant this, and so his judgment is this. Is that true or false? Is that fact or opinion? That's a better. Someone says about someone else, he said this, he meant this, so his judgment is this. Is that fact or opinion? Right? Look how they went. He said these words, he meant this, and therefore his judgment is this. You know how many people get called a kafir because of that methodology? That methodology, they take people out of Islam with it. He said this, he meant this, and this is kufr. So he's a kafir. That's a famous, and sometimes I be listening to me, man, how you know he meant that? How did you get in his heart? And did he tell you he meant that? So why don't you say, he said this, what I understood from that is this, and if he meant this, this is kufr. How about that? That's more like reality than to say, he said this, he meant this, and this is kufr, so he's a kafir. There's a big difference between the two. Instead of saying, he said this, what I understood from this is this, and if he meant this, this is kufr. That sounds more like fact. If your understanding of kufr is correct. Add that part to it too. Maybe your understanding of what is kufr is wrong. You understand my point? But you got people that run off with that. So-and-so's kafir, 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 kafir. Based on what you think. So that's like saying, when a person says, all Wahhabis are kuffar. Do you know every Wahhabi? Where did you get that from? All Wahhabis are kuffar. You met every Wahhabi and you know what they believe? And what they understood from what you think they're saying? To say everyone who's a Wahhabi is a kafir? Especially when you're talking about us, many of us are default Wahhabi and don't even know what they're talking about. Many of our people are default Wahhabi. They have no idea what you're talking about, nor do they believe what you're talking about. but you just judge everyone as kafir. Blanket, no conditions or nothing. Blanket kufr for everybody. Come on, man. That's not Islam. That's crazy. You don't even know what a person believes and you call them a kafir. Where did you get that from? Who taught you that? You don't even know the person. Never heard him talk, and you just said he's kafir because he go to that masjid, so he's a kafir. Or he listened to that person, he's a kafir. Huh? Where'd you get that from? Maybe that person never said a word of, and that's real. Maybe that person never said a word of blasphemy that other person heard. They heard everything else that was correct, so they follow them. They don't even know nothing about what you're talking about. But you just judge that person as a kafir because he listened to so-and-so. And he never heard a blasphemous statement from so-and-so. Do you understand how crazy this stuff can get? So that's why I say don't rush into the kufr stuff. He's a kafir, he's a kafir. You don't know enough to do that. Usually, that's the position of rulers and judges to do that. So don't rush. Sufficient to learn what is right and disbelieve in what is wrong. At our level, that's sufficient. All that making us muftis, we're not muftis. We're not at that level. We don't know enough to do that. But we know enough to know what is right and wrong. Not everybody was in prison. No, people are learning that in the streets from fanatical groups and fanatical sheikhs. They ain't all no one in prison. So I'm just saying, be safe. The day's going to come. Watch. I'm warning you. Because it was already done to Sheikh Walid. It wasn't done to me yet, far as I know. It was implied, but wasn't explicit. Right? They're good with words. They judged Sheikh Walid as a kafir. Right? Someone judged him as a kafir. And when they told me why he's a kafir, I said to the person, that doesn't make sense in English or Arabic, what you just said. What they judged him as a kafir for, that doesn't make sense in English or Arabic. And I told the person, man, get out my face. Well, he wasn't in my face. We were talking. I'm glad he wasn't in my face, right? I'm glad he wasn't in my face, right? But they said he's kafir. And that's kufr. I said, that stuff don't make no sense in English or Arabic, what you just said. I don't care how you say it, in English or Arabic language, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But that's the light that the world we live in, right? So I'm waiting for my judgment of kufr to come. I'm waiting. Because I know it's coming. They just ain't caught me yet. But watch, when they put kufr on me, watch how I tear them apart. And it's going to be that methodology. He said this, it means this. And people who don't even speak English, right? Who don't even speak English well are going to make such a judgment. And English-speaking Negroes are going to follow them in that judgment. You heard what I said? The person who's going to make the judgment doesn't speak English, doesn't understand our context, doesn't understand our culture, doesn't understand our usage of words, and is going to come tell us what English words mean, and then some dumb Negro going to follow him in that. Right? And when I say that I can't wait to stop them in their tracks, I hope it never happens. But if it does, and they send a Negro with it, I'm going to rip them to shreds. And I want to do it publicly. So they stop. So they stop. Because that's dangerous. When they come, I'm going to rip them apart in public so they stop. Not to hurt the person, but those slave masters who keep sending our people to destroy our people need to be stopped. That's deep stuff. That's deep stuff. That's so cruel to unjustly try to take people out of Islam to support your slave master. That's bad. That's real bad. All right. I went off a little bit. Excuse me. Please forgive me. But that's hurtful, right? You looking to make people non-Muslim, who are Muslim, who are Ahl Sunnah, you making them kafir. What kind of ugliness is that? You're looking to make them kafir. That is so ugly, right? Wow. You're looking to make them a non-Muslim. Do you see how ugly that is? A person who is Ahl Sunnah, Alawli, Ash'ari, Maturidi, Shafi'i, Sufi, follow the same thing, read the same books, and you're trying to make them a kafir. What the hell is wrong with you? Read the same thing as you, study the same books as you, and you're trying to make them a kafir. That's deep. That's deep. It's dangerous. All right. I went way beyond what I wanted to discuss, but it's just so, it bothers me inside. I've never been a guy who can always contain all how I feel. I struggle with that. That's my weakness. I hate that stuff. And I hate to see my people be used like that. It really bothers me to see my people being used. It disturbs me to the core. Right? It really, really, you know, they say that thing boil your blood, that one. We are good people, and people make us bad. It's an ugly trait. May Allah help us. And may Allah overlook our shortcomings and make us better. But I'm telling you, more of us need to stand up. More of us need to take a stand against oppression and racism and, you know, mind slavery and spiritual abuse. We need to take a stand against that stuff. A strong stand. No compromising in that joint, in that area. Tayyib, inshallah, tonight, Sheikh Walid Rifai, who is not kafir, by the way, he's a Muslim, right, will continue in his explanation of Al-Aqidah As-Sanusiyya. May Allah give him tawfiq and protect him from those who wish to harm him with words or states or other than that. May Allah keep his protection over him. Barakallahu bikum. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Inshallah, we'll see you tonight at 8 o'clock with Sheikh Walid Rifai. Assalamu alaikum. Have a good Jumu'ah. Recite plenty of salat and salam on the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.